Hello, and welcome to Superbwoman Sundays at 7. I'm your hostess, Janet Neal, the founder and queen bee at the Superbwoman. I'm so happy you joined us tonight. If this is your first time, a special welcome to you. You are in for a big treat. I always am showcasing wonderful, amazing women that I've been meeting on my journey, and tonight I'm so happy to have Angela Mason with us. And in a minute, I'll give you a little bit more about her. But before I do that, I just want to tell you a little bit more about the Superbwoman. I started the Superbwoman about a year ago with the belief that women are powerful beings that can change this world, and many, many women don't realize it. And so what the Superbwoman is all about is putting together the resources and the skills and doing talks and books and things like that just to help women get the message, this show indeed, to get the message that we are powerful beings, and all it takes is taking that step back to learn to be yourself, to understand who you are, and then go do. It's not about being a superwoman. It's not about the doing. Been there, done that. I think a few of you can relate to that. It's all about being first and then doing. So I'm so happy today to have my friend Angela Mason as one of my guests. Angela and I met at Women at Woodstock retreat, which those of you who have heard me before have heard me talk about the retreat, which I'll give it just a little plug right now. Please go to womenatwoodstock.com after this and check it out. It's a wonderful retreat for women over 50. You'll meet amazing women, get fabulous skills, and the connections you make will be something you will not get anywhere else. So womenatwoodstock.com. And there's my friend Angela. Angela and I met where she was one of the keynote speakers. The stories she tells, unparalleled. To be a good storyteller is one skill. To be a good storyteller because you have lived an incredible life is something altogether different, and that is what Angela brings. Angela is from the UK originally, now living on the west coast of the US. She started off and was trained as an actress, and then went into marketing at the old corporate jobs, and then I'm going to let her tell you the rest of the story. So welcome, Angela.
Janet, thank you. It's lovely to be with you, even virtually.
Such a treat, such a treat. So as I was kind of alluding to, you have had an interesting journey yourself, going from starting as an actress and then going into the corporate life, and then your life took a big turn. So why don't you take us from there and tell us what happened next?
Well, yes, indeed. I've so enjoyed living in Northern California. My goodness, now it's 35 years. But I need to tell you of a special evening that was in April 1990. And I was enjoying the American life. I suppose I had the American dream, as we say. I was married. My little daughter then was just over a year old. I had a wonderful business career in executive search. And my life was very sweet. But it was one Friday night at the end of April 1990 that I was just sort of flicking through the TV, looking for something to watch, as we all do. And I happened on the most watched 2020 of all time. That's a show on ABC television. And that was the first time any of us had glimpsed inside Romania, inside those hellish orphanages where little children and babies were barely alive, and they were suffering terribly in these institutions. I'll never forget that night. I watched TV. It was like the TV was staring back at me, and I just had this overpowering moment. It wasn't a decision. It was just a sort of a knowing that I was supposed to do something about this. Now, of course, I had no skills. I didn't know how to set about anything, but I did know that I could walk downstairs to my husband. And I remember saying to him, darling, I now know what I have to do for the rest of my life. And I looked like a zombie, and he was terrified. He wondered what was wrong with me. And I said, I have to go to Romania to save some children. Where's the atlas? Because I wasn't quite sure where Romania was. I thought it might be south of Russia or something like that. But that was a night that changed my life. You know, we all have seminal moments in our life, and that was one for me. And so within days, I had contacted the show, the producers, tried to track down people that were actually on the program, and started to learn everything I could about Romania. Well, to cut a long story short, several months later, I quit my business career and started my own non-profit helping disabled children in Romania. And of course, that was very enjoyable and scary, but luckily, because I didn't know anything, I didn't know I could fail. So I just set about, how do you eat an elephant? Well, with a knife and fork, one mouthful at a time. Well, not that I was going to eat an elephant, but I was absolutely certain, without a shadow of a doubt, that I was supposed to use my big mouth that I'd learned as an actress. I was supposed to use my sales and marketing and persuasive skills that I had used as a recruiter. And now I was going to use all the skills I had to be this non-profit reaching overseas to kiddies living and dying in orphanages. And, you know, sometimes as I look back now, 24 years later, if I had known what was ahead of me, I'd have both been excited and terrified, because that was a wonderful life. And as I said, I learned as I went along. One of the things I enjoyed more than anything was actually collecting people. It was only a me for that one evening, but ever after that, it was a we. Literally hundreds and hundreds of people from Northern California found me because, you know, I had that moment in the light that I was on TV, I was on the radio, and I was being interviewed for the newspapers, and so people found me, and we started on that journey together. And that journey led me to 3 marvelous years of actually going to Romania, coming back, and basically I stayed in the US fundraising, or as I used to always say, fundraising. I would take the distress out of it and just be a fundraiser. But transferring my enthusiasm for what I felt was a great deal of hope for these children and for Romanian people themselves, because they weren't bad people. They were just very poor, and they'd been very closed off for many years under the communist system. And now they too felt free. And so we had a wonderful partnership. And that went on for 3 years until a very large, one of the largest international organizations for children in the world, second only to UNICEF, in fact, a group called World Vision, which is an international organization. They came knocking on my door, literally. And I remember that the gentleman who came to introduce himself said, you know, we're one of the largest children's NGOs in the world, and very few people have heard of us in Northern California. You're one of the smallest little agencies in Romania, and everybody seems to have heard of your group. Would you join us? And then you could be an advocate, you could be a voice for kids in 100 countries instead of just one. Well, I was really intrigued about this, and I remember at the time asking how many women fundraisers they had in the United States, World Vision, and at the time there was only one other woman who became a dear and lifelong friend, but there would be her and me and a lot of wonderful guys. And I remember going to my mentor, who was my right hand with our organization in Romania. And I said to her, what do you think, Rose? Do you think I should go? And She was a very feisty elderly nun. And if ever you want some help in life, you should have an elderly, feisty nun at your side. Because
Great advice.
she said, yes, she said, yes, go into that organization, Angela. Infiltrate them. Show them what women can do. And so I joined World Vision in 1993. And therein began another journey, a 20-year journey with wonderful experiences which took me all over the world. So I think now I added it up. I think I've been to 78 countries, some of the poorest places in the world. And yet I've met remarkable women and men and kids who are just amazing people. And so I've been able to be a storyteller for them, not about me, but sharing their stories from Papua New Guinea to Congo to Peru to Bosnia during the war to Afghanistan. And it's been a wonderful life so far.
That's amazing. I can't even start to think about the things that you've experienced. Let me go back a second, Angela, to that night, that fateful night when you were watching the television show, because it seems right then you allowed yourself to be open to understanding what's important to yourself and to be open to whatever the path held for you. Am I correct in that?
Yes, I mean, at the time, as I said, it wasn't a decision I made. It was a sort of knowing. I was in the darkened bedroom, the TV was on, and you know, I just felt this moment. It wasn't like you know, anybody touched my shoulder or I heard anything, but many of my friends said, "Well, it was a calling, Angela," and
Yeah.
others said, "Hey, you've gone round the bend," and yet other friends said, "It's your destiny." So what I say is, I think it was all three. I had gone round the bend. It was my destiny, and it certainly has been a calling on my life. When I was a teenager, I almost lost my life. Of course, that's another story. And I always, every day after that, life was very precious to me. And sometimes I used to think, my goodness, I could have died. I didn't die. And it was on that night in 1990, so many, many years later, I realized, wow, am I alive at this moment because I'm supposed to be this, a big mouth for children? And so it was a kind of a knowing, and I'm terrified. I mean, wait a minute now, you know, I wasn't sophisticated enough to think of it as a higher calling. I was just petrified because I'm first of all, I have a phobia about flying. I hate flying in airplanes. Now here I am all these many years later and I'm still scared, but I'm also a bit stubborn. So when I hear that children or poor families in the world are suffering because it's war or famine or an earthquake or a tsunami, I have this compulsion to be there and to get to know the situation, to meet people and to come back and share their stories and fundraise. You know, that's really important that we get help overseas. And also in this country, I've felt the same compulsion with our own kids here in the US. So as I said, I'm not brave. I'm really not. And I'm scared to fly, but I get in that airplane and I do it anyway.
That's that's such an inspiration because a lot of women in general, studies have shown that, women wait until the conditions are, pretty darn good before they'll move, as opposed to men who, 60% and then they're ready to go. So you were willing to, even though that was a big thing, you had that fear there, you were willing to go anyways. Was there something outside of, the time when you nearly lost your life, was there someone else in your life that kind of helped you, guided you, helped you to become this person who was really comfortable in her own skin, able to act as if and overcome?
Well, it's interesting because before mentoring was a sort of a popular thing to do, I've always had wonderful mentors, and women actually older than myself. Besides, the first one in my life was my grandma. She was just a remarkable woman who always said to me when I said, "Oh, I'd like to be an actress, Grandma." And, like most people, my mum, for example, said, "Oh, that's very nice," as she was busy doing a job or cooking or something. But my grandmother turned to me and said, "Well, of course you can be an actress. Why not?" And so she was the strong woman that I've often, thought about all the different times that she said, "Yes, you can do it." Because she was an ordinary woman who had an extraordinary life, and she was very strong. It was a difficult life for her. So throughout my adult life, I've had women mentors. As I said, Sister Mary Rose Christie, a Sister of Mercy, just came and found me after I had seen this thing on television. She'd seen the same program, and we got connected very quickly, and she became a huge inspiration to me and really began to teach me all about how you do this kind of work, how you do international relief and development, how you engage people for fundraising, how you set about trying to get partnerships with others and to set up good, solid programs to really help people and not just have a Band-Aid solution. Later in life, another wonderful friend of mine, who was, again, much older than me, Freddie, volunteered to come with me to Bosnia during the war because we were so mad about women and girls being raped as an act of war and ethnic cleansing that we were determined that we would do something about that too. And so she came with me. So as I said, along the way, older women seem to have factored into my life, which is why I so enjoyed going to Women at Woodstock and meeting you, Janet, and so many other fantastic women who have been life-changing for me in this last year or two. So I'm glad you mentioned it, and I'm looking forward to participating again in the women's retreats that they have.
Excellent. So I heard you say that mentors are really important and teachers are really important. And boy, I gratefully share the experience of having a wonderful grandmother that really helped to push me onto my path and encourage me. So I totally relate to that. What else, Angela, would you say? I always talk about the superb women as women who are comfortable in their own skin, which obviously you are, and who lead or are moving towards leading a should-free life. What kind of advice would you give as far as what kind of shoulds you have released in your own life?
Well, I remember, when I left high school, I had very, very good grades, and everybody was urging me to go to university. And I said, no, I really want to be a professional actress. And in England, at the time, in the early 70s, there were only about half a dozen drama schools that were around. And I had to get into one of them. So I did get in. I auditioned and I got picked, which was fabulous, And I worked all the time as an actress, right from drama school. I was right away into work, theatre, radio, television. But I never got a college degree. And I certainly don't have a master's degree in international development or a bachelor's in marketing. So I've always felt like I was very uneducated. But one thing I did do was read and learn and always find people who knew a lot more than I did. So I've stopped worrying. And I tell women when I do a lot of public speaking, and as you know, keynote address at women's conference and things. And I always tell women, don't let the fact that, you don't have higher education to stop you, because some people feel very shy that they aren't. I said, look at me, I'm an ordinary woman. And I've had an extraordinary life. I'm not brave. I'm not highly educated. And yet, you know, there is a place for all of us. So I let the shoulds. You know, as a keynote speaker, I always remember I had spoken to a group of high schoolers for about 45 minutes at a conference, a day-long conference they were having about self-confidence and public speaking. And after I'd finished talking, one of the children put her hand up and said, "Miss, you've just spoken to us and we've loved it. But the lady before you was teaching us about public speaking, and you did all the things that you're not supposed to do when you public speak." This child said, "You waved your hands around, you laughed at your own jokes, you scratched your face, you have a hole in your stockings." I was so imperfect. But you know what? Every one of us is imperfect. I get up and stand in front of women. I'm not a beauty. I'm chubsy, you know, and overweight. And now I'm 60 years young, and I thank God I still feel great. But you know what? I get up in front of people because I think if I can transfer my enthusiasm to someone in the audience who's shy to stand up and say, this isn't right, whether it's something in their local community, whether it's about domestic violence or it's about some horrible situation that's going on in their place where they live, or even if it's something let's say they want to reach out to kids who live somewhere else in the world. We can all be global citizens, you know, we can all reach out. And I always say when one woman gets together with another woman, that's not 2, that's 11, because one woman will tell 10 of her friends about something, and we tend to work in tribes, you know.
Yeah, so that's a perfect segue, because I was just going to ask you, so what are you doing next? So tell us more about your new company, 11 Plus.
Well, I had 20 years, enjoyable years with World Vision, and then this last year I've had a very enjoyable year helping a small international women's group in Berkeley. And in the last few months, my 2 wonderful business partners, Mark and Sandy, and I have been creating this philanthropy consulting company. So what we do is we help people who have small nonprofits who need help, maybe learning how to fundraise or put on an event or raise money. Oh, I've said that, didn't I? See how imperfect I am? Okay, everyone listening and looking, see how imperfect I am. I repeat myself. My husband says I talk in circles. Well, we do. We women do have circular talking. So getting back on track, 11 Plus, which is about one and another one getting together, and the plus is all the good that we can do together. We also consult with people who have money to give away. Where do you give your money? Do you know if where you are giving your resources, is that a good place for you to park your funds? So we do a lot of research for our clients. We help them figure out how to be more philanthropic. But we also help small nonprofits figure out how they can grow and how they can be more successful. So it's a lot of fun. I never thought I'd be a consultant, but I love it. It's another sort of way of teaching and sharing.
That's excellent, excellent. You know, and I usually am asking my guests, you know, how do you feel you're giving back? Angela, we don't even have enough time for all your stories on how you're giving back. But what's one, you know, we've just got a couple minutes left. Leave us with one more story about, you know, your giving back to the world, because it's so rich.
Well, you know, although I've been a global citizen and a traveler, and I'm still doing that, I also look around our own community and all the things that, it doesn't matter whether you live in Northern California or North Carolina or wherever you're living, we've got a lot we can do at home as well. So I do quite a lot of volunteer work, which I find fun, and I can't wait actually to be retired in a few years so I can do more volunteer work. But giving back through, particularly through working with women's groups here, with working with people at my church, working with Seroptimists, which is a wonderful business women's group, um, and reaching out to local projects and women who are trying to go back into the workforce, or girls that would like an education but they can't afford it. So we do a lot of helping women to get back on their feet again. It's very, very important. So I'm enjoying that. I sit on way too many boards. I could be busy all the time if I wanted to, just enjoying local volunteering. But I also enjoy very much, as I said, being a part of Women at Woodstock, because again, I can stand up and say, look, if I can go to Africa, Afghanistan, Albania, Appalachia, so can you. And I do really encourage people to come travel with me and see. That's another wonderful thing I love to do, is take people with me overseas, and they can see it's life-changing, absolutely life-changing.
Absolutely. Well, Angela, you are totally an inspiration to me and to thousands of other people out there. I mean, just I can't even begin to tell you how your stories just are filled with awe for me. So you're a perfect example to me and to others out there of a superb woman, of a woman who's comfortable in her own skin, a woman who's taken the time to understand what's important to her and is actually doing that. So I'm so grateful that you have been my guest today to be able to share just a little snippet of the things that you're doing. And give us your website right now, Angela, so if people want more information, how can they get a hold of you?
Well, they can go to www.11plusu.com. And the 11 and the plus and the U are all words, not numbers. So 11plusu.com, or they can find me at angela@11plusu.com. So I look forward to hearing from others. And Janet, it takes one to know one. You too are a superb woman, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Likewise. Thanks so much. And next week, please join me at Superbwoman Sundays at 7 with Deborah Goldstein is going to be my guest. Deborah is a restaurateur, someone who has a company, Goldie's Table Manners, who's talking all about how to start a restaurant, help restaurateurs, and she also has a company that helps women connect with each other. So more about that. Please join us next week, and thanks so much for joining us today. Bye-bye.